Ever walked out to where you swore you parked and had that moment of panic?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Well, today we're taking a deep dive into car theft,
Ooh, exciting.
looking specifically at a CP24 article from November 19th, 2024, that lists the most stolen vehicles in Ontario for 2023.
Okay.
So by the end of this deep dive, you'll know which models are hot targets,
Mm-hmm.
some of the reasons why this is happening,
Yeah.
and most importantly, what you can do to protect yourself.
Great. Can't wait.
So, to kick things off, I want to bring in our expert
All right.
who's been following this issue very closely.
I have. It's crazy out there right now, honestly.
Yeah, so
So many cars being stolen.
let's jump right into it.
Okay.
What's the most stolen vehicle in Ontario?
It's the 2022 Lexus RX. It's interesting because it's not just a local trend. This model is highly sought after by thieves across Canada. In fact, the second most stolen vehicle in Ontario is the 2022 Toyota Highlander. And that one actually tops the list for the entire country.
Wow, the Highlander. I mean, I know it's a popular family car,
Mm.
but to be the most stolen vehicle in all of Canada, that's surprising.
Yeah, it is kind of surprising, but when you think about it, it actually makes a lot of sense.
Oh,
Yeah, so the Highlander is known for being super reliable, and its parts are pretty much globally serviceable, so it has a really high resale value, not just here, but also in overseas markets.
so these thieves are thinking globally when they're stealing cars.
Oh, absolutely. It's a big business.
That's kind of scary.
Yeah, a little bit.
So it's not just about joyriding anymore.
No, not at all. This is organized crime we're talking about.
Okay, so we've got the Lexus RX and the Toyota Highlander at the top of the list. What about the rest of the top 10?
Well, it's a pretty consistent theme, actually.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, mostly SUVs and pickup trucks.
Hmm. Are we seeing a pattern here?
I think so.
Why the love for bigger vehicles?
Well, part of it might be the global chip shortage.
Oh, right. That's been affecting the auto industry for a while now.
Yeah, it's made new cars harder to come by, which has driven up the demand for used vehicles,
Uh-huh.
including stolen ones.
So basically.
The higher resale value of SUVs and trucks makes them even more attractive to thieves.
It's like basic economics is fueling this whole thing.
Exactly. Supply and demand, but in a shadowy underworld.
Okay, so we've got supply and demand,
Right.
we've got organized crime,
Mm.
and we've got a whole lot of SUVs and trucks being stolen.
Yep. That about sums it up.
But the article also mentioned something about vehicles with keyless ignitions being particularly vulnerable.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
Can you explain why?
Sure. So thieves are using techniques like relay attacks, where they amplify the signal from your key fob, even if it's inside your house.
Wait, so they can steal my car even if my keys are safe at home?
It's possible, yeah. They trick the car into thinking the key is present.
That's terrifying.
Yeah, it's definitely a cause for concern. But there are things you can do to protect yourself.
Like,
Well, we'll get into that in more detail later. But one simple solution is to use a Faraday pouch.
a Faraday pouch, what's that?
It's like a little metal cage for your key fob. It blocks the radio signals thieves try to amplify.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's pretty effective.
Okay, so we've got relay attacks and Faraday pouches.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot to take in.
It is, but it's important to understand how these things work so you can protect yourself.
You're right, knowledge is power.
Exactly.
And speaking of knowledge,
Yeah.
I found this quote from Brian Gast, the VP of Investigative Services at Equite Association. Really interesting.
Oh, yeah, what did he say?
He said, one of the most common trends we're seeing on the top 10, the most stolen vehicles list, includes newer vehicles with keyless ignitions.
Yeah, no surprise there.
It just highlights how vulnerable these systems can be.
It really does.
But before we get too deep into that, I want to shift gears for a moment and look at the impact this is having on different regions across Canada.
Okay, sounds good.
The article mentioned some pretty startling increases in auto theft.
Oh, yeah, the numbers are pretty alarming.
From 2021 to 2023, Ontario saw a 48.2% increase in vehicle thefts,
Wow.
and Quebec experienced an even greater jump at 57.9%.
That's a huge increase.
Atlantic Canada wasn't far behind with a 34% increase.
It's happening everywhere.
And even though Alberta had a relatively smaller increase of 5.5%, it's still concerning considering the potential reasons behind it.
Yeah, for sure.
So we've got these regional variations.
Right.
Why are certain provinces experiencing such significant spikes?
That's a really good question. There are a lot of factors to consider.
Like what?
Well, it could be differences in law enforcement strategies
Mhm.
or proximity to ports for shipping stolen vehicles overseas. maybe even different demographics or car preferences in each region.
It's like a giant puzzle with all these interconnected
It
pieces.
really is.
So we've got global supply chains, organized crime networks, regional variations, and a whole lot of vulnerable vehicles. Where do we even begin to unpack this?
Well, I think a good place to start is by taking a closer look at how these keyless ignition systems are actually being compromised. It's not magic, it's technology. And understanding that technology can empower us to find solutions.
That's a perfect segue into the next part of our deep dive. But before we get too technical, let's take a quick break and come back ready to arm ourselves with knowledge and maybe even a few gadgets. Okay, so we just learned a whole lot about how car theft is evolving.
It's a whole new world out there.
It is, and it's honestly a bit overwhelming.
It can be, yeah.
But you mentioned earlier that there are things we can do to protect ourselves.
Absolutely.
So let's shift gears now and talk about solutions.
Okay, sounds good.
What are some practical steps we can take to make our vehicles less attractive targets?
Well, I think the first line of defense is surprisingly low tech. It's awareness.
Awareness.
Yeah, just knowing what makes certain vehicles targets, like those keyless ignitions we talked about, that helps you assess your own risk.
So should I be dishing my fancy keyless entry and going back to good old-fashioned keys?
Not necessarily. Technology can be a double-edged sword. While keyless ignitions present vulnerabilities, there are also tech solutions to mitigate them.
Okay, so what kind of tech solutions are we talking about?
We'll get into those in a bit, but even before we get to that, simple things like being mindful of where you park can make a big difference.
Okay, so park smart.
Exactly.
What else? Visible deterrents are surprisingly effective.
Visible deterrents.
Yeah, like a steering wheel lock.
Ooh, those big clunky things.
Yeah, exactly. They might seem old school, but it's a visual cue that makes a thief think twice. They're looking for the easiest target, so anything that adds time and complexity to their operation can deter them.
So basically, make my car look like more trouble than it's worth.
Exactly.
What about security systems? Are those worth investing in?
They can be. But let's get back to those keyless ignitions for a moment. Remember those Faraday pouches we mentioned earlier?
Right, the little metal cages for your key fob.
Yep, those are great for blocking the radio signals. Thieves try to amplify. So it's like putting your key fob in a signal-proof vault.
Exactly.
That seems pretty easy to implement.
It is.
And speaking of tech, I'm curious about what the future holds for car security.
Ooh, that's a good one.
What kind of innovations are on the horizon?
Well, manufacturers are starting to integrate biometric authentication into their vehicles.
Biometric authentication, like fingerprint scanners.
Yeah, exactly.
So instead of hacking into the signal, they'd have to replicate my fingerprint?
Pretty much.
That sounds way more challenging.
It is.
Are there any other futuristic security features in the works?
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of exciting stuff being developed. Some manufacturers are exploring voice recognition, even iris scanning as additional layers of security.
Iris scanning. Like in those spy movies.
Yep, that's right.
It's wild.
And then there's GPS tracking technology
Mm.
that can help recover a stolen vehicle more quickly.
So it's like the car industry is finally realizing that security needs to keep pace with technology.
Yeah, it's about time.
What about the role of law enforcement in all of this? They're the ones on the front lines, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Law enforcement agencies are working hard to investigate thefts, apprehend criminals, and disrupt those organized networks we talked about.
So it's not just about catching the individual thief. It's about dismantling the whole operation.
Exactly.
Are there any specific successes they've had in disrupting these networks?
There have been some significant victories. Just recently, a joint operation between Canadian and European authorities led to the dismantling of a major car theft ring. They were responsible for trafficking hundreds of vehicles overseas.
Wow, that's encouraging.
It is. It shows that law enforcement is taking this issue seriously.
So we've got tech solutions, we've got law enforcement working hard, but what about us as individuals? What can we do on a daily basis to protect our cars?
Well, aside from the things we've already talked about, like parking smart, using visible deterrents, and Faraday pouches, there are a few more things to consider.
All ears.
Firstly, be mindful of where you leave your key fob. Don't leave it near your front door or in plain sight.
Because thieves can amplify that signal even from inside the house.
Exactly.
Got it.
Secondly, if you have a garage, use it. It's an extra layer of security that can make a big difference.
Okay. Use the garage check.
And finally, be aware of your surroundings. If you see anything suspicious, don't hesitate to report it to the police.
So it's a combination of common sense and proactive measures.
Pretty much.
What about those of us who are in the market for a new car? What should we be looking for in terms of security features?
That's a great question. When you're shopping for a new vehicle, prioritize security. Ask about the immobilizer system, the alarm sensitivity, and whether GPS tracking is available.
So don't just focus on the color and the sound system.
Exactly. Security should be at the top of your list.
It sounds like we're all part of a collective effort to combat this problem. Consumers, manufacturers, and law enforcement all working together.
That's right.
It's pretty empowering.
It is. It reminds us that this isn't just about protecting our vehicles, it's about protecting our communities and our peace of mind.
Well, I'm feeling a lot more informed and a lot less helpless. But before we wrap things up, I want to take a moment to consider the future of car security. What might that look like?
Ooh, now you're talking my language. The future of car security is a fascinating landscape, full of emerging technologies and innovative solutions.
Okay, lay it on me.
Just imagine a world where your car can recognize you by your voice, or even your heartbeat.
Hold on, heartbeat recognition. Is that even a thing?
It's not mainstream yet, but it's being explored. Biometric technology is advancing rapidly, and using unique physiological markers for authentication is definitely on the horizon.
So my car could literally have a pulse on my presence.
Yeah, that's one way to think about it.
That's pretty amazing.
It is, and it's not just about biometrics. Think about the possibilities of AI-powered surveillance.
Yeah.
Imagine cameras that can not only record but also analyze suspicious activity, like in real time, alerting authorities before a theft even occurs.
That's next level.
It is. It's like giving law enforcement a heads up before the crime even happens.
Wow.
And then there's blockchain technology.
Oh, yeah. Watch it.
It's already disrupting so many industries, and car security is no exception.
So how would blockchain be used for car security?
Well, we could see tamper-proof digital keys and vehicle histories stored on the blockchain.
Interesting.
Yeah, it would make it virtually impossible to sell or export stolen vehicles.
So basically, it's like giving every car a unique digital fingerprint. That can't be forged.
Exactly.
That's pretty cool.
It is. It's about leveraging these cutting-edge technologies to create a security ecosystem that's proactive, intelligent, and virtually impenetrable.
So it sounds like the future of car security is pretty bright, even if the present is a bit daunting.
Yeah,
But how far off are we from this futuristic vision?
some of these technologies are closer than you might think. Biometric authentication is already being integrated into some high-end vehicles.
Oh,
AI-powered surveillance systems are also becoming more sophisticated and affordable.
that's good to hear.
And blockchain, while still in its early stages of adoption, has the potential to revolutionize vehicle security in the coming years.
So I've got a lot to look forward to.
Yeah,
It's been fascinating exploring this topic with you.
Likewise.
For our listeners who are feeling a bit overwhelmed by all this information, what's the one key takeaway you want them to remember?
I think the most important thing is to shift from a mindset of complacency to one of awareness and action. Don't wait to become a victim. Take steps today to protect your vehicle, whether it's using a steering wheel lock or researching advanced security features for your next car.
That's great advice.
And remember, this is an evolving issue. Stay informed about new technologies and security trends, and don't be afraid to ask questions.
Those are all great points.
Sure.
I know I'm definitely going to be more proactive about my own car security after this conversation.
Good.
I think we've covered a lot of ground today. From the most stolen vehicles in Ontario to the global forces driving this trend and the cutting-edge technologies that are shaping the future of car security.
It's been a great discussion.
It has. So
Yeah.
for our listeners out there, stay vigilant, stay informed, and maybe invest in a Faraday pouch. Your car will thank you.
Absolutely.